How's it going, Ergonauts, and welcome back to the Ergocast, the final frontier for all the gossip on the next generation of open finance. In these shows, we like to explore the idea of a decentralized society by examining the defined technology to which it will be compiled from, with an emphasis on the surroundings in Ergo. For today's show, we have Mr. Stalferge, who is going to guide us through the ins and outs of Appkit. How's it going, Mr. Stalferge?
Hi, thanks for having me here. I'm doing fine.
Good. So, Appkit, we hear about it a lot in the Ergo ecosystem. A lot of apps use it. Maybe you could tell us where it is and its intended use within apps.
Yeah, sure. Appkit is Ergo's SDK for Java and its ecosystem. So an SDK is a library that developers can use to build up on it. So Appkit has a lot of functionality built in that you want to reuse. Every user that uses my wallet application uses Appkit through it because I've built up on Appkit. For example, creating addresses, the long string that is actually your address is calculated by mass, and that is done by Appkit. Sending funds, building transactions on Ergo, parsing the information from non-fungible tokens. Everything is done by Appkit. We've built a lot of functionality in it, and developers can use it to make similar stuff.
So they've been right in calling it a library?
Yeah.
Put simply?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's different. If you say library, it's often small. When you say SDK, it's a big library, but it's still a library, but with a lot of functionality.
But would you go as far as calling it an SDK?
Mm-hmm.
Could we also say that it's there to increase the amount of opportunities developers have on Ergo?
It's not increasing the amount of opportunities, but the ease to come into the ecosystem. If you would not have such an SDK, then you have to implement everything from scratch. Building a transaction, for example, and signing it with a private key, that's not a simple task to do. So if there wasn't an SDK, you had to implement everything yourself, and that would be a lot of effort. By reusing Appkit in your own application, and that can be an end-user application or server-side code, you can simply call some methods, 3 methods, and then you have everything done and don't have to get into all the details yourself.
So in a way, it becomes a component of the application.
Yes.
To allow it to work with Ergo.
Mm-hmm. It is never end-user facing. The end-user will never see Appkit because it's a bunch of methods that will be called inside the application.
Is there any examples you could use of projects on Ergo using Appkit?
Yeah, of course. The Ergo wallet application uses Appkit. The Ergo mixer uses Appkit. TokenJ uses Appkit on the server side. And I know that the folks from our smart pool use Appkit. Padea also. So mainly all projects that are building on the Java ecosystem, which doesn't mean you have to implement Java, but also Scala or Kotlin, all JVM languages. All these projects use Appkit because it's a no-brainer. It's there and available. And if you wouldn't use it, you would just make efforts that's already done.
It sounds like most of the big projects in Ergo are using Appkit in some way or another. It's interesting because you mentioned other languages as well. You mentioned Java, Scala. So Appkit allows you to create applications in all these different languages, aside from Scala, which is what Ergo uses.
Yeah, it's written, parts of Appkit are written in Scala, parts are written in Java, but that's working because both languages are essentially running on the Java virtual machine. Scala is a different programming language, but when it is compiled, it's compiled into the same bytecode that Java programs are compiled into. And so they are running in the same virtual machine, and that's why they can interact very easily. And it's the same with Kotlin, the other language I said, and which the Ergo Wallet app is written in. It's also a language that compiles into Java bytecode and runs in the Java virtual machine.
Right. When did Appkit get released then? How long has it been around for? Because if there's this many projects and the project doesn't, it can't just be spun up in a couple of days.
No, it's around for years. It was started by Morfik or Alexander Slizarenko. He's the developer of Ergoscript as well. And the Scala interpreter of Ergoscript, that the core of Ergo and the reference client, everything is written in Scala. And technically, Scala can use Java code. But the other way around, it can become difficult. From Java, you can't use all Scala code. And so his idea was to start developing a wrapper that will expose the core of Ergo to Java. That was the start of Appkit. And then when it was there, it slowly became a complete SDK, not only a wrapper, but there's also helper methods to fetch information from Ergo Explorer or to fetch information from the nodes. And then when I joined the project, I'm not a Scala developer, I'm Kotlin and Java developer. We got more and more stuff that are directly implemented with Java, mainly for things that I needed in the wallet app, like parsing information from tokens.
Right. So it sort of sounds like, it started off mainly to facilitate development in sort of the logic side with all these different languages and whatnot. And now it's sort of allowing developers to work more in the DeFi space, because you mentioned tokens.
Yeah,
right.
Tokens are a native part of Ergo. So, of course, you can also send tokens with Appkit, build transactions using tokens. Mint tokens is also supported, of course, and make use of the meta information of tokens.
So how has this come to be then? I read on the GitHub repository that it has compatibility with GraalVM. Maybe you could explain that a bit more for us.
Yeah, GraalVM is a compiler for Java code. The advantage of Java was that it can run on every platform within the Java virtual machine. So Java and Scala normally don't compile to machine code, but only to an intermediary code that is interpreted by the Java virtual machine. That has a lot of advantages, but some disadvantages. For example, it can't run on platforms where the Java virtual machine is not available. For example, on iOS, it's not available. And of course, if you make web browser, you want to make everything in the web, then only JavaScript is available. And also JavaScript and Java has a very similar name. It's like ham and hamster. It has nothing to do with each other. So GraalVM is a compiler that can compile the Java bytecode into machine code so that it can run without the Java virtual machine. And Morphic did that in the past. I must say I did not use it so far. I have no experiences with GraalVM because for my usages of Appkit, it's not needed. I use it server side on TokenJ, and there's no problem to use it in the JVM. And on Android, it's also within the JVM. So have no further experiences with compiling it in GraalVM, but Morphic did it.
Right. But by being compatible with GraalVM, you mentioned all these different languages. Does it become possible to develop in one, say Java or Scala language, and then for your application to be reusable across different devices? Yeah,
that is the main idea. But keep in mind, it's an SDK. So it is not an application for the end user. The idea of having it compatible in GraalVM is that it can be reused by developers that use another language. Every programming language can make use of machine code. And so if you compile Appkit into machine code, you can use it in theory in any programming language. But Morphic, at the moment, he is busy making everything compatible for even another compiler that will compile to JavaScript. Because today, JavaScript is also very important. And it slowly moves everything towards not having machine code anymore, but JavaScript compatibility. Because nowadays, where the web is present on every device can run JavaScript.
What does this mean for tooling, though? I mean, if you can have your apps run across different environments, what about the tools people would make to use the apps? Is it the same?
It mainly means that every developer can use Appkit. That's what Morphing is pushing for. Right now, it's only to be used by JVM developers, and we also have a wrapper for Python, which is not a JVM language, but we have a wrapper that is used by some projects which can run the JVM, and the Python code can interact with the running JVM. There's still a JVM needed and running, but the developer can implement everything in Python. But the goal is that everyone can use Appkit, not or without the JVM, so that it's can be used by all programming languages.
So how can Appkit be implemented per se? So it's a library.
Mm-hmm.
But what is it about the library that allows it to work with the Ergo protocol and all the contracts and the blockchain architecture and that?
Yeah.
Is it a case of it just being code that goes above Ergo? Is it an API?
It is an API, and it's also using API. So it's a layer between the reference client, but it also has a lot of code from the reference client inside. So, for example, when you use a smart contract, Appkit can compile smart contracts from its Ergoscript source code into the Ergo tree, and it does it. So it's working independent from the reference client. That means, for example, we just had the change to protocol version 5 now at the beginning of this month. So if you use an old Appkit version that's still built up on version 4, you will still compile everything and run everything with protocol version 4, which is not a problem. It is backwards compatible, version 5. So if you use an old Appkit version and connect to a node to submit your transaction, it will accept it. But this is important to understand that Appkit ships with all the logic inside.
It's quite nice, really, isn't it? Because if you learn how to work with Appkit, in some way you sort of learn parts of Ergo itself.
Yes, that's indeed. The most difficult part is getting into it. So that's why we've written a simple tutorial how to create an address, how to send funds to another address. That's probably where most developers start from. I did it myself this way when I developed Ergo Wallet apps. The first thing I had to do is creating an address from a seed phrase and send funds. And when you are already using it, then you begin to understand how it is organized, checks through all the code that Appkit provides, and learn more and more.
I guess really the sending of funds and creating wallets is the hello world example for developing blockchain.
Yes, exactly. That's where it begins.
So aside from being a wrapper, the GraalVM compatibility, what is it about Appkit that allows it to fulfill its intention?
There are multiple parts. It's not. It's grown as every software project. Its inner core was an Ergoscript compiler, which means that it can compile Ergoscript and run Ergoscript even without the blockchain. You can run your smart contracts virtually to test them without actually moving any funds, which is very convenient. But it also has methods to submit to the blockchain and fetch from the blockchain. These were added later, and these are the real connections. Without them, you would only swimming in a dry pool. You can build everything but never submit it. So probably this is the part that is most important to make it really work.
There's an ahead of time compiler as well, isn't there?
It has AOT coasting, the Ergoscript compiler, or more when it is run. Yes, it's inside Appkit. Now it is with the latest version changed to another coasting.
Okay. So with that, the meeting of its intentions, how is development in Ergo changed with Appkit? We have the shared libraries, we have the polyglot development. If Appkit wasn't around, what differences would there be when developing?
Without Appkit, probably only Scala developers could make use of all the features Ergo provides. And Scala is not a very common programming language around. So I can tell you for sure that I wouldn't be around if Appkit had not existed when I checked Ergo. I came into the ecosystem because I was mining and I'm an Android developer, and there was no Android wallet application. So I checked and saw that there's an Java SDK, and so I built the app on it. When there weren't Appkit around at that time, then probably there was no wallet app yet.
But have apps changed themselves from Appkit? Maybe they're a bit smaller, or
it's hard to say if the developers that are using Appkit now would have joined the ecosystem and built up on the Scala libraries directly, or if they had skipped and used another chain to build their projects. I can't judge that. But Java still is one of the most popular languages around. So it is very important for us to have an SDK for it.
all right. Okay. How about other areas of Ergo? Can Appkit, or does Appkit allow interactions with, say, Scorex? Maybe in the future, do you guys plan to allow Appkit to work with other dApps that are really popular? Mm-hmm. Maybe Ergo Mixer, since it brings in privacy?
Mm-hmm. Scorex is one of the core libraries that is reused in Appkit in modern software development, where libraries reuse other libraries, and the core of the Ergoscript compiler is Scorex. So this library is already inside Ergo, but Scorex is only to be used by Scala. So that's why there are parts written of Appkit in Scala, because it can only be used by Scala. And so this code in Appkit is a wrapper to make it usable by Java. And then there are also Java implementations making it even more convenient to be used by Java. The other question was for dApps. And yes, there are already dApps implemented in Appkit. For example, the bubble fees are already implemented in Appkit. We just have not time for everything. So I needed bubble fees to be used in Wallet app. So I've not implemented it directly in the Wallet app project, but in Appkit, so that other projects using Appkit can also reuse it. I've also implemented HUSD swap in Appkit because I needed it for TokenJ. That are two very important dApps available. Others are not present yet, but it's not a project by two persons. If any developer is willing to contribute code, then we are always open and thankful for it.
It sounds to me that it's becoming a bit more than just a way of interacting with Ergo itself, in terms of what it can do.
Of course, it's we are wanting it to be the library where you can make use of all the ecosystem. But of course, we can't have everything in it. Some dApps are not very reusable, or don't want to be reused by other projects because they want to change their smart contracts. So we have these EIPs on Ergo, many people probably have heard of it. Bubble fees are an EIP. Auction House had made its contracts an EIP. So when there's an EIP, then we can implement it in Appkit. If there's no EIP, like Sky Harbor has smart contracts, but no EIP for it, then it's probably not something that should be implemented in Appkit.
And I guess by some point in time, the definition of being a library would sort of evolve into a framework, wouldn't it? If it allows you to do almost or near enough everything within the ecosystem.
It's a naming. If you call something SDK or framework, that's there's
just
no
that
real
one more
definition.
step, isn't it?
You could say that. For me, an SDK is less user-facing, while a framework often has UI parts. But I don't think there's a global definition for these words that everyone accepts. So it's not clear what's a framework and what is an SDK. If anyone would say it's a framework to build on Ergo, it's not wrong.
And you mentioned about the EIPs, Babel fees, to be specific. I also noticed in your release notes that you've incorporated or you've accommodated for a lot of other ones, such as the token standards and wallet standards, etc. I'm just wondering how difficult it is to keep up to pace with these EIPs, because there's a lot of them. It's not a simple library; it's quite complex. So,
yeah, of course, it takes time and effort to be up to date. But I would say the more difficult thing is to make a decision. What is important enough to be implemented now so that others can reuse it, and what is not so important. We were very fast with adopting bubble fees because I had the feeling that it is a great feature. And so I wanted to have it in Appkit and the wallet app because before we have the urge to have it. We are now we have it, and it is supported, not used much, but may come in the future. Other stuff, mainly NFT projects, want a lot of special stuff implemented for NFT. And that often doesn't seem for me very important, because just when a single project wants some enhancement for NFTs, it probably is not very important for the whole ecosystem. But as I said, it is a decision that is hard to make. Everyone thinks his own project is the most important one.
I guess you do sort of have to prioritize what EIPs actually matter to the general development community.
Yes, of course. But that's my time. Of course, I have to prioritize my time. As said, Appkit is open source and everyone could join and implement. So if anyone has a special need and implements it, then it is proper that we would accept it, and then it's supported.
You mentioned earlier about being an Android developer. I'm not sure if you mentioned about Android being a part of Appkit as well. Could you tell us some more about that? About what we could do with this new Android aspect of the library?
Appkit is compatible with Android, which is can be said, because Android has a JVM, but it's a bit, it doesn't support everything a desktop JVM can. So it's always a bit extra work to make things compatible for Android. And the main advantage is that because Appkit is compatible with Android, everyone that wants to write an app interacting with Ergo can use Appkit in an Android app. And mobile is very important today, so that's a great feature.
So is it right in saying that I can, whatever I can do with an app that I develop for a desktop, I can also do for Android as well?
Yeah.
What about other developments within the tech space, maybe up and coming, like WASM or IoT sort of devices? Does Appkit have any intention to expand our horizons in that respect?
We had not the need so far. We are a small team and can't make things before there's a need. Many IoT devices nowadays are Android devices under the hood. There are coffee machines, and of course all the smart TVs are often Android based. So probably we already are compatible with these devices.
Okay. And considering progressing into that area, here's a final one for you. Does Appkit support the pursuit of smart money in Ergo? So maybe it speaks for itself, but...
No, I have no idea what you mean exactly.
Okay. So if we consider contractual money and the needs of it, do you think Appkit is supporting that pursuit in Ergo?
I don't understand the word pursue in that.
Okay. So does Appkit support the idea of smart money?
Of course, it can compile the smart contracts that you design. And by that, it can make use of smart money. It also is to be used in the off-chain code that Ergo needs. That often is Appkit based, the bots that are used by Spectrum. I'm not sure if Spectrum really uses Appkit. They are all Scala developers. But in theory, it could be used, as an Appkit could be used in off-chain code. So yeah, you can make your smart money applications with Appkit, of course.
No, that's great. Thank you for coming on, Mr. Staufferge.
Yes.
I think we've given quite a comprehensive delivery of Appkit to the community. And I hope the community yourself, you've found pleasure in watching today's episode. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.